We'll leave this Washington Journal segment at this point to go live now to the National Press Club this afternoon for a debate among the candidates running to be the chair of the RNC. One of the candidates, Gentry, dropped out of the race over the weekend, leaving current chair Michael Steele and the 4 people looking to replace him. This is live coverage on C-SPAN.
In the sense that while 168 members of the Republican National Committee will be making the decision on the chairmanship, this is a decision that affects everybody who cares about the country, the Republican Party, the center-right movement, and we thought that the more transparency, the better in candidates making their positions known to the whole country. At the time, we also suggested the same offer to the Democratic Party, who decided to pass on that level of transparency. Most recently, Tim Kaine, the head of the DNC, announced
is complete in its fundraising, its management, its communication, and in knowing how to win elections. I believe that our best days are ahead at the Republican National Committee, and I ask you to join me in renewing and restarting the RNC.
Good afternoon. My name is Saul Anuzis, and I'm asking for your vote for chairman of the Republican National Committee. I think the Republican National Committee is at a moment of crisis, and I think our country is at some of the largest challenges we've ever had before us. And now is the time that we basically have to return to fundamentals. If you take a look at some of the challenges that we face across this country, and you take a look at the challenges we as a party faced to bring this country back, we have to elect more Republicans and make sure that we can fund the job that needs to be done. So what I bring, I think, to the table is a set of unique skills that basically cover the entire spectrum of what we need for the next chairman. Over the last several years, I have served as chairman of the Michigan Republican Party. Today, I'm the national committee man. I served as a county chairman, a state committee member, a district chairman, a precinct delegate. I've run for office as well. But today it's going to be about fundraising. Unfortunately, we're going to start out this cycle with one of the largest debts we've ever had in our history. We've got to raise some $20 million before we even start banking money for the next presidential race. We have tremendous challenges with respect to making sure that our Get Out the Vote effort, our voter identification efforts, all the technical things that are necessary are done and funded, most importantly. I think we need somebody who can make the trains run on time. So what I've done over the past is I have the political skills that are necessary based on the various roles that I've played. I think I have the administrative and management skills that are necessary to run a large organization and bring things together. Most importantly, I think I have the fundraising skills where I've actually gone out and raised money in some of the most difficult times ever in a state like Michigan when we had some of the worst cycles in 2006 and 2008 and successfully raised over $29 million in our state alone. So as we look forward as to what we need as the next chairman, if we take a look at the challenges that we're going to face as the next chairman, I think you need somebody who can articulate the message, who can make sure the trains run on time, and who can raise the money necessary to fund the programs we're going to have to do. And with that, I offer myself as a candidate for chairman. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Maria Cino. And first, let me thank Grover and Tucker and Marjorie for hosting this debate, and also our fellow RNC members. Thank you for coming in person. I appreciate the effort. And all of you, Happy New Year and welcome to 2011 and to the 2012 elections, because the race for president has already begun, and the billion-dollar campaign is well underway. That's one of the reasons that the election for the RNC chairman is so extremely important. It's important because the next chairman is faced with significant challenges, in addition to mounting a campaign to compete against $1 billion. And that's why I'm running for RNC chairman. I know what it takes to manage the RNC. I've trained for this job most of my life. I've worked at the RNC or with the RNC for the last 30 years. I've managed every essential program during a presidential election successfully and on budget. I know what it takes to retire big debts and build and rebuild strong national campaign committees. I did that in 1994 with Congressman Bill Paxton when we turned around the NRCC and went on to win a majority in the House of Representatives. I'm a fundraiser. I've developed fundraising programs. I have the respect of major donors from around the country, and I've raised millions and millions of dollars. My past experience has also taught me the importance of a strong state party organization. They're essential to winning presidential elections. They're essential because that's what we did in 2000, that's what we did in 2004. I planned, I raised funds, and I implemented a 50-state victory program for each state. Heck, I've even run the Republican National Convention. Finally, I know that I can't do this job alone. I know that it takes a strong team of talented, smart individuals, and I'm prepared to put that team together. And that's what it's going to take to win the elections in 2012. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Michael Steele, Chairman of the Republican National Committee. It is a real pleasure to be here with all of you. Happy New Year. Thank you to Grover and his team at ATR, certainly Tucker and the Daily Caller and Marjorie, and our fine friends at the Susan B. Anthony list. When I began this job in 2009, we couldn't find anyone to say they were a Republican, let alone run for one. We couldn't find people who actually believed that we could do it, that we still had value. Time magazine claimed that we were an endangered species in 2009, not that long ago. And so in coming into the RNC, where we were hemorrhaging our base of conservative supporters long before my tenure began, where our donors were frustrated in anger, where our core beliefs were questioned, we put together a small team and got busy at the task of winning elections, reaffirming the value of this party to the American people, but most especially to those who have committed themselves to it. And that was hard work. I'm a glass half full kind of guy. I don't see the crisis as some may see it. I don't see it as something where the alarm bells go off and you start throwing and remaking and blowing up. But what you do is you get down to the heavy, burdensome work of building, and we did. And in 2009, New Jersey, Virginia happened. Beginning of 2010, Massachusetts and Hawaii happened. And we began to see in ourselves the opportunity to win. And as we get through this next cycle, that reality confronts us larger than anything else. We fired Pelosi. The Democrats wanted to hire her back. That will take that mantle up in this time as well. But my opportunity for all of us now is to go forward, to continue to build on the successes that we've had, and I ask for your support in doing so as the chairman of the Republican National Committee.
I think the cameras can take a break now. My name's Reince Priebus, and I know it's a tough name. That's what happens when you have a Greek and a German for a parent. You get a name like mine. I just want to thank you, Grover. Thank you to Tucker and Marjorie for putting this on. I'm running because I believe that the very American idea is at stake in this election. Our country is about to walk off a fiscal cliff. And as all of you know, pretty soon we're going to have more people riding the wagon than driving the wagon. And the RNC needs to restore the trust and the confidence of our major donors, our grassroots activists. You know, when I took over as chairman of the Wisconsin GOP, we had loads of debt, and we didn't have a lot to build on. I think most of you know that our blueness is somewhere between Minnesota and Maine. But we did it the right way. We did it with conservatives like Scott Walker, our new governor. And hallelujah, Ron Johnson, our new U.S. Senator, defeating Russ Feingold. Sean Duffy is now where Dave Ovey used to be. We flipped both houses of the legislature. We won 5 out of 8 congressional districts. But you know what the best thing is? We did it the right way. We did it together with the conservative movement. You know, once and for all, Tea Party activists, Republicans in Wisconsin, we could be darn proud to go to the polls on Election Day and say, that's the kind of Republican I want to vote for. You know why? Because our Republican Party understands that we are not in competition with the conservative movement. We are part of the conservative movement, and we learned that if we could do 3 things, we could rebuild our party and our credibility. And those 3 things are pretty simple. We need to find people of their word to run for office. We need to win elections. And then finally, we need to govern like we campaign. And if we can learn to govern like we campaign, then and only then will we be able to take back the White House in 2012. Thank you.
First question. There is no formal job description for the position that you are each campaigning for, the chairmanship of the Republican National Committee. What do you think is the most important task for the chairman of the RNC in 2011 and 2012? If elected, what would you focus on as your greatest responsibility? Saul Anuzis.
Fundraising and everything else. I think we have tremendous challenges at the party. Obviously, with this unprecedented debt, this is going to be a tremendous challenge with respects to rebuilding the credibility amongst so many major donors who have left our party. I took the time before deciding to run to actually call some of those donors and find out what happened and what it would take to get them back. And I was very surprised to hear that almost all of them were willing and able to come back, and were surprised that oftentimes they weren't even asked for a contribution. So my goal, and what I think would probably spend the overwhelming majority of my time, would be fundraising so that we could fund the programs in the states that are necessary to turn out the vote.
I would do three things. The first thing is get our fiscal house in order. We have to practice what we preach as Republicans, and I think we need to get our debt under control. We've called for a 2-year budget, matching the budget cycle of an election cycle. Using that, looking at the dollars raised, matching that with the dollars that can be spent in the coming election cycle. Secondly, I would rebuild our fundraising organization, raising the money that's going to be necessary to beat Barack Obama, take back the U.S. Senate, and add to the U.S. House. And third, build strong state party organizations. We have learned time and time again, during a presidential cycle, you do not win presidential elections without a strong state party organization. And I have called for an 18-month state victory plan that would be due April 1st of this year to get us on our way.
Certainly, dealing with the finances of the organization are going to be extremely important as we go into a presidential cycle. We have a $15 million line of credit, which we have structured with the bank that will start being repaid. We have ongoing vendor and other responsibilities and expenses that carry over from the 2010 election cycle. So that clearly will be a priority. As I articulated to our budget committee at the time they passed the budget, in 2010, and certainly for this upcoming year, and the entire membership knows that that is a priority. I think just as importantly, and Maria touched on it, is what we do to continue to build for our grassroots. Going into this period is going to be incredibly important that we continue to engage the coalition of leaders and opportunities we have with individuals outside of the party itself. So I see those as dual opportunities for at least the first quarter or two to make sure that we hunker down, get the money tight and right, make sure that the dollars, whether it's refinancing on the debt, whether it is making certain that we have the opportunity on the ground with our fundraisers and our donors out there to become a part of this team, and certainly our grassroots.
I think our first priority has to be and must be electing Republicans. But to do that, we need money, and we need a lot of money. We need a chairman that's going to put his or her head down and spend literally 5-6 hours every day making major donor calls, major donor visits, literally working like an absolute dog for the next 2 years, getting our fiscal house in order. The other thing we need to do is we need unity in our party. We all know it. We need to speak to the Tea parties. We need to speak, of course, to the Republican Party, ATR, SBA, all of our groups. We need unity. We need to be working together. And lastly, what I mentioned before in my opening, we need to keep credibility in our party. And that means we need to govern like we campaign. We need to hold our elected officials accountable so that that unity piece can actually happen. And that's a piece that I think could be the most important piece as a party that we need to keep our eye on moving forward, that money and ultimately electing Republicans.
Thank you. The job description is really to be the standard bearer of the party, and that has multiple facets underneath it. It's supporting our party platform in large measure. It's recruiting good candidates. It's bringing our grassroots together. It's talking to new and existing coalitions out there and welcoming all of those conservatives who have been such a part of our movement this last election cycle. It's about winning elections. It's about winning the White House in 2012. That is the job description of the Republican National Committee chairman. And to do that, you've got to raise money. We have to restore our major donor programs. It would be my hope, once doing a thorough audit of the Republican National Committee and putting our fiscal house in order, putting the management checks and balances that need to be there, pulling together our finance chairmen of the past, new and old, to put a plan together to go out wherever two or more are gathered and to ask for money, put a plan forward, a business prospectus that puts forth a path to victory in 2012, which is the main job description of the Republican National Committee.
Before we go to the next question, I just want to remind our viewers that the hashtag for Twitter is #RNC debate. The next question begins with Maria Cino. How do you balance the desire to field conservative candidates with what are electoral realities, especially in blue states? What is the balance? Did you see, for instance, the victory of Christine O'Donnell over Mike Castle in Delaware as a triumph of principle, or did you see it as a disaster?
Well, you know, I would I look at it as the chairman of the Republican National Committee. Our job is to grow the party from the bottom up. And the job of the chairman is to make sure that we provide our state parties with funds, we provide our state parties with resources, talent, technology, and boots on the ground to elect the candidates that the state parties and the Republican voters put forth. And I see that's how the balance should be. It goes to the state parties who have the power and recruit the candidates and help us elect the candidates.
Maria's exactly right. In this last cycle, there were a lot of dynamics at play here among the state parties. For the first time, the state parties were engaged in a way unlike they've ever been before. We had put in place a comprehensive 50-state strategy that would provide those boots on the ground, the resources. We opened victory offices in January as opposed to August of this year for the sole purpose of engaging an activist base so that they could come out and participate, and they did. And so you saw, whether it was in Delaware or whether it was in Florida or whether it was in California, a level of activism that was, I think, long overdue and welcomed for this party. At the end of the day, the national party's role is to stay out of the state party's business when it comes to the election of their nominees for office, period. Our rules are very clear about that. And while that may upset some who want to see the party go in and insert itself or see other party committees around this town do the same, it is improper, it is wrong, and when they do, they pay a dear price. You pay a dear price in support from activists, you pay a dear price with donors, and you pay a dear price because at the end of the day, you wind up losing seats that maybe you otherwise could win.
I think our party has to mean something. I think being a conservative has to mean something. Our party platform means something. I think our chairman has to be an outspoken, unabashed conservative Republican that can hold our elected officials accountable. But I agree. I mean, that balance is definitely that at the end of the day, the chairman of the RNC has to support our nominees. There's no question about that. But I do believe that state parties have a role, and some state parties have taken that Rule 11 pledge and supported Republican candidates pre-primary in their states. And under our rules, we allow for that. And we give the power to the states to make that decision. We did that in Wisconsin. We endorsed pre-primary Ron Johnson and Scott Walker. And you know what? We have a very late primary in September. And we had to do it. And it worked. But it worked because the state parties had the power under the rules of the Republican National Committee to do that. And I support that, and I would support that as chairman going forward as well.
If there's one thing that we've learned from this last election cycle is that the people decide who is going to win elections. It is the people that are going to decide who's going to win the primaries on both the Republican side and the Democrat side. It is the job of the Republican Party to stand up for our platform, for our ideals, and to try and recruit candidates that will be true to our conservative principles and values. But at the end of the day, the people will decide who win those primaries, and it is our job then to win the Republican election. It's our job to grow our majority in every single state, in every single courthouse, in every single legislative district across this country. And we have to well fund our state party programs, our victory programs, our get out the vote programs. I think there are many out there that have really lifted up the grassroots. It's important that we have the funding at the Republican National Committee to see the job through that the people decide during the primaries in order to win the general election. Thank you.
I really don't think we need to have a whole lot of balance in the sense that I think the primaries work and I think the voters work. The voters know who they want to vote for. I think it has always been a mistake when someone from above tries to decide who the nominee ought to be. When somebody comes in and says, oh, this person is too conservative or this person is too whatever it may be, I think that's a mistake. I think we should let the primary process work. The state parties are well equipped to handle it in most cases. We have a system that works, and we ought to trust the voters. When we as Republicans put forth our best candidates, when we run like Republicans, we win. When we run like Democrats, we lose. So I think it's a very simple process, and I think we ought to let the voters decide, and it is us as a Republican Party who ought to support our nominees and push for those people who are then elected or nominated to be our nominees.
Third question will be asked by Marjorie Dannenfelser with the Susan B. Anthony list.
Susan B. Anthony List's primary mission is to advance and mobilize pro-life women in the political process. My charge, I'm happy to say, was to represent social issues here today, which is a unique opportunity because as families go, so go the nation and so goes the civilization. And that's in direct contradiction, of course, to the idea that we ought to have some sort of truce on social issues where we set them aside and move about the business of what really helps America. I had the unique privilege of interviewing each of the candidates here along with Maggie Gallagher and Frank Cannon with the National Organization for Marriage. We took our role very seriously, and so I have my first question is on marriage, and here's what it is. And this is on behalf of National Organization for Marriage. The traditional definition of marriage unites over 80% of Republicans, while certain Republican elites try to portray this large majority as being on the wrong side of history. Regardless of how you see your role as chairperson, you are almost certain to be put in a position to defend traditional marriage by a member of the media. What is your best 30-second case for the defense of marriage between one man and one woman?
Michael Steele.
Thank you. Thank you. It's foundational to who we are as a nation, how we define ourselves as people. The idea of the man and the woman joined together to create family is as old as time. And we are, as a nation, tied ourselves inextricably to that. Not to the exclusion of others, not to diminish anyone's individuality, but to say in a very supportive way that the family unit, the family concept is an ideal that we aspire to. It is what we work towards to create a healthy environment for our kids to grow into, so in the future they too can be contributors to our country and to our nation and to our history and our legacy. It is rooted in those ideas and those traditions. There are a lot of discussions and debates about the definition of family, and everyone has their own way of making it. As a party, though, we have said very clearly that we support this ideal, that we support this tradition. And I think that that is a very good spot for the party to be in.
I don't believe that judges can rewrite the Constitution and redraft what marriage is. I think marriage is, there's a sanctity of marriage. I believe that. I believe, and I agree with Michael, that certainly it's foundational in our lives. I believe my kids and I believe children should grow up with one father and a mother, if possible. Certainly we support single parents. It's really hard. I don't believe anybody should be denied dignity in this discussion. Everyone should be loved. But at the end of the day, I believe that marriage, through the sanctity of marriage, should be between one man and one woman.
I agree that marriage is between one man and one woman. It is the true fabric of our society. And I live my marriage beliefs. I've been faithfully and, I don't know, I guess happily married, for 24 years. Would you agree, dear? Have to ask him. For 24 years, we have 3 beautiful children. I live my family traditional values and my values and sanctity of marriage as I consider a true sacrament, a bond that's taken before God and others. I also think it's wonderful as a state party chairman, as I was, to watch these kinds of values reaffirmed legislatively. When we won the majority in both houses in Missouri for the first time in 50 years and then elected a Republican governor, we were able to pass legislation that a constitutional amendment in Missouri that said that, in fact, that reaffirmed your 80% center-right beliefs in this, that marriage is between one man and one woman.
Yeah, look, I think very straightforwardly, marriage is both a religious and a cultural institution that has existed for over 2,000 years. I think it is a natural aspect of life, and I think that marriage is between a man and a woman, and that I think the family unit is very important. And actually, I think that our both belief and our kind of activity to promote marriage and to promote the nuclear kind of our traditional family is an important distinction that we have in America versus almost every other country in the world. So I just think it's very simply both a religious and a cultural institution that is worth protecting and worth fighting for.
I believe in traditional family. Marriage is between a man and a woman, and I believe that because it's been a big part of my faith and my upbringing, my family upbringing. And I support the Republican platform.
Question. What has been the Republican Party's greatest failure over the last 10 years? Reince Priebus.
Of not doing what we say we're going to do, not living up to the promises of our platform. I think that what we saw in this last election, certainly in Wisconsin, is what happens when you put true conservatives on the ballot that speak the truth, that speak to the principles of our platform. And even in Wisconsin, we can turn a state red by sticking to the principles of our party. You know what? People were defeated because a lot of us in this room were tired of going to the polls, holding our noses and voting for Republicans that didn't uphold the basic principles of our platform. And I think that thanks to a lot of groups, including Tea Parties and ATR and our own Republican Party, regrouping and really getting back to the basics, we're able to save our party. But like I said, the bigger issue is saving our country. We can save our party along the way, but we need to stick to our principles in order to do that.
Over the last decade, the Republican Party at various levels has been in and out of power, and at all times it's the people that decide. When we get into power and we lose our way, the people have a way of, in this marvelous democracy and republic in which we live, has a way of righting that wrong. And I think in the last 10 years, one of the big failures of the Republican Party has been too much spending and growth and debt. Our deficits and debt are out of control. What we are passing along to my children and your children is wrong. We have got to rein in spending. We have to take a serious look, everything on the table in terms of spending, and get our debt and our soaring spending out of control. And we have to do that authentically, really, and every single day. Otherwise, the people will toss us out.
Well, I just remember 2 years ago when we came off of two of the worst cycles ever. Basically, we'd walk around and talk to Republican activists around our state and around the country and apologize for the fact that we had lost our way. We no longer stood for the things that Republicans traditionally stood for. We voted for the bridge to nowhere. We voted for higher taxes. We voted for higher spending. We stopped voting like Republicans. We stopped acting like Republicans. And we stopped talking about the issues that the American public believed in. This is a center-right nation. This is a country that believes in our fundamental conservative principles. When we act and talk and work like Republicans, we win. When we start acting and voting like Democrats, we lose. So I think our biggest problem over the last 10 years is we stopped acting like Republicans. We lost faith and belief in the fact that we are a conservative party and we represent conservative principles, and therefore we paid the price for it. And this time around, we got a second chance. That's all it is. It's a second chance and an opportunity for Republicans to start acting like Republicans, or the voters will throw us out again.
Well, let me spice things up a little bit, and I'll give you two. First, passing McCain-Feingold. That was a mistake. You're taking up my time. Second, and is what everyone else has said, losing our way on spending. I think Saul said it best. When we lose our way on spending, when we lose our way on taxes, when we lose our way on the deficit, we lose elections. We lose voters at the ballot box. And if we've learned anything from our friends in the Tea Party, it's that we need to stay focused. We need to stay on message. Cutting taxes, cutting government, and reducing the deficit. It wins elections. It won them in '94, it won them in 2010, and I agree. We've got a second lifeline here. We better use it.
Very good. I think all of my colleagues here have hit it just right at one level, where we certainly walked away from the contract with America from 1994. We started defining ourselves outside of ourselves, beyond who we were and what we believed. And again, Democrat light does not sell well in the public. The other thing, though, I think is equally important, where the party just kind of got it wrong and fell off the rails, is we stopped talking to people. We stopped trying to connect directly with people. We stopped expanding and reaching. We are the party of Lincoln. We're the party that understands the value of the individual in this American enterprise, and how part of our charge is to go out and to grab as many of those folks and make them a part of this wonderful experience that we have in believing in the value of individual liberties and freedoms and free markets and those systems that have worked to build a nation. So when we stop talking to our friends in the Latino community and the African American community, and when we stop engaging with individuals and we make assumptions about, well, they don't vote for us anyway, that's when we really start to lose. And going forward, we will lose big if we lose sight of the fact that America is not the America of the 1950s and the 1960s or even the 1990s. It's a very different day.
The next question begins with Ann Wagner. You described the RNC chairman as the standard bearer of the party, and I think most people would agree. Given that, I'm interested in what it means to be a Republican, or more specifically, what would disqualify someone from describing himself as a Republican. Specifically, what beliefs would a person have to espouse for you to say that person is no longer a Republican?
Well, you know, I will tell you, I think that the standard bearer must believe in the kind of pillars of conservatism that I think many of us hold near and dear: limited government, free enterprise, personal responsibility. There are, I think, three pillars that are very key here, and one is a fiscal economic side that reins in this out-of-control government spending and assault on our freedoms, both at a economic level and at a personal level. There's also a pillar of national defense, and I will tell you, after my time serving as United States ambassador, I have a great appreciation for the pillar and the strength of our national security and how important that is. And the third pillar would be that of a traditional values, and whether that is a sanctity of life, whether that's the sanctity of marriage, whether that's the Second Amendment, whatever the social values are out there that we care deeply and hold near to our hearts, those are the three pillars that I think are important for a standard bearer to carry. And if you can't carry all three, then I don't think that you should be serving as chairman of the Republican National Committee.
Yeah, I guess I would basically kind of use Ronald Reagan's line that if someone's with us 80% of the time, then they're probably a Republican. And the way I would take a look at this is to say that we have a platform that stands on our principles. We lay out very clearly what our positions are. We articulate them in, I think, a very thoughtful way. And if a candidate, a standard bearer, someone who was going to represent our party, supported the platform at least 80% of the time or more, I would consider them a Republican. If not, then I think we would have a problem and would have to take a look at that very seriously.
I would fall back on what Ronald Reagan has taught us, and that's there are three legs to the stool: protecting the family, reducing government waste and spending, and a strong national defense. And I think that really sums up what's in our party platform and what we as Republicans stand for.
I would agree with all that, but I would also say, having done the job for 2 years and recognizing that this country is much bigger than we think it is sometimes, and it runs a lot deeper with its passions than we like to believe on a host of issues. I see the job of the chairman as the standard bearer is to, one, uphold that platform, yes, but to recognize that everyone who comes into this party will have some problem with this platform. And your responsibility and your opportunity is to work with them and help them if they want to be active, if they want to assume leadership, then they'll have to come to understand the importance of these principles and what they mean. But we cannot be a party that sits back with a litmus test and excludes. And the national chairman cannot go into a state and say, you're less Republican than you are, therefore I will not talk with you and only talk with you. That is not the Republican Party I joined at 17 years old. And it will not be the Republican Party I lead over the next 2 years. Trust me.
Well, I think that being the standard bearer for the Republican Party has to take into account that our country is in great peril. As I said before, we're about to walk off a fiscal cliff. And I think that the RNC chairman ought to take a chance and promote that conservative platform every time that he or she has an opportunity to do it. Because right now, just without anything Barack Obama and Nancy Pelosi did this past 2 years, normally it costs about 19 cents on every dollar made in America to run the federal government. Without anything that they've done, it will cost, by the time my son, who's 5 years old, is my age, it will cost 40 cents for every dollar made in America to run this country. And if we don't have a chairman who understands that being a Republican means something, that if you're pro-abortion, pro-stimulus, pro-GM bailout, pro-AIG, well, you know, guess what? You might not be a Republican.
Okay, Marjorie Danifeltzer with question number 6.
About 15 or so pro-life Democrats who were so-called and voted for abortion and health care will tell you life matters in elections and is a centerpiece of winning and losing elections. In recent interviews with all of you, each of you affirmed your support of the right to life of the unborn child. Given this fundamental commitment and the important coalition partner that pro-lifers are in races, pro-life donors and activists have seen a disconnect in RNC operations. So specifically, what steps would you take as a tactician to integrate the issue into messaging, coalitions, technology, and all financial and other assets that are at your disposal as chair?
Whose turn is it?
Question goes to Saul.
Well, let me use the example of what we did in Michigan. We worked very closely with Right to Life and other groups that we were able to do on a regular basis, sitting down and identifying who the candidates were, who were the potential candidates, what kind of resources were needed, what we could do legally together, what we couldn't do together, what we had to do independently, et cetera. So I think that there has to be a working relationship with all of our coalitions, and particularly those who support the sanctity of life. I think that, look, you know, when we run for office, I think it's very important for us to stand on our principles. I think that ideas have consequences. I think that issues matter. And when we run away from those issues, we run away from opportunities. We run away from voters. We shouldn't hide where we stand on the issues. It doesn't mean you necessarily have to lead with one. It doesn't mean one or the other isn't more important at a given time. But I think we as a party have to integrate abortion and any other issue just like we do everything else. It is an important part of our platform. It is where most of our voters stand. It is where the general public basically stands and believes with us. So I think that you know, we can spend resources and we can talk about how we have to do that and do it effectively.
I would do what I've done for the last 30 years, Marjorie, and that is really work hard to build and invest in strong national and state coalitions. It's how we win elections. It's working with the various pro-life coalitions to make sure that we register our voters, we identify them, we get them out to vote. I would also, as I've just stated earlier, call for an 18-month state victory plan that is submitted April 1st. And each of those states should have a significant component dealing with coalition building and development. In addition, as I have always done, have an open door policy to all coalitions, to sit down and talk with individuals, work with them, plan, and strategize as we look to the 2012 elections and winning elections.
This is an area that we paid particular attention to, not just with respect to the life issue, but a whole host of issues that revolve around what Maria referenced as the coalition effort, building out and establishing within the Republican National Committee a coalitions department with the specific charge of going out and building relationships on the ground with everyday activists across the country, expanding the reach of the party, expanding the voice of the party, making sure that the party is represented. And certainly that was no less true in our efforts with members of the pro-life community with whom I met several times publicly and privately on a host of issues from health care to statewide issues. And on the statewide front, here again is where the rubber meets the road. Having those relationships at the state legislative level where the battle for marriage and the battle on life questions are being engaged every single day. Having that relationship, it's not played out at the federal level anymore. It's really played out state by state, legislature by legislature. And the party has an opportunity to engage with our state legislative leaders, as we have over the last 2 years, to help on these very important issues.
I believe, too, it's obviously something that can be very effective. In the states, we've worked very well with Wisconsin Right to Life. It's a great chapter, obviously, around the country. I don't believe we either have none or close to none, but I think venture to guess no state legislators or federal office holders in the state of Wisconsin that aren't pro-life. And we work really well with the Right to Life. I think it's obviously paramount to our platform as Republicans. I think we have a responsibility as Republicans to help promote the Right to Life issue. And I think that we have a responsibility to work with SBA, Right to Life, and all of those groups in order to promote that platform. And this is a coalition that's vitally important to our movement, to the conservative movement, and I would do everything I could to continue to promote that coalition and be proud about the fact that we are pro-life. Now, we do believe that life begins at conception, and that at the moment of conception, every individual is entitled to the freedoms under the Declaration of Independence and the 14th Amendment of our Constitution.
Thank you, Marjorie, for the great question and for the work that you do to promote with SBA pro-life women candidates out there. It's unfortunate if anybody at the Republican Party level, state or national, would be discouraging our candidates from holding their pro-life values and views out front. We certainly don't do that in Missouri. I think it's important that the Right to Life Coalition and all coalitions have a seat at the table to discuss everything from candidate recruitment to turnout to targeting, all the things that go into the messaging to win a good, healthy election. We did this in Missouri, whether it was direct mail pieces, regional radio. We always encouraged our candidates to talk about the life issues, and I think that it's not anything that the party should hold back from in any way, shape, or form, and in fact, it will do nothing but grow our coalition and enforce our platform. And the Right to Life organizations out there, whether they're SBA or at the state or national level, should always have a seat at the table, whether it's platforms, candidate recruitment, or winning elections.
Over the last 50 years, there have been a series of waves of immigration of new activists and voters into the Republican Party. In the 60s, the Goldwater voters; in the 70s, the pro-family voters; in the 80s, the so-called religious right. Then there were Ron Paul supporters, and in the most recent 2 years, the Tea Party movement. What will you do? And yet, every time this happened, there were establishment Republicans standing at the door asking why all these new people were showing up at the meetings, and they dressed funny, or they talked funny, or they hadn't been there for the previous 20 years, and why had they bothered to show up now? How do you keep the Republican Party open to the next waves of who can be added to the party's strength, and what groups do you see particularly available that we ought to be pursuing? Maria Cino.
Okay, I'll try to dissect that multifaceted question. Thanks. Thank you, Grover. Well, first of all, again, my experience has been building strong coalitions. And I would first and foremost welcome, as I always have, open door and talk with all of the various groups, talking to them and communicating to them and working with them. I think the second thing is to make sure, again, that our state parties are aware of these various coalitions and these various groups, and they're working with these folks as we look down the road and building from the bottom up our party to elect Republicans in 2012.
I've spent my entire political life in the trenches here in this town, Washington, D.C., where I grew up, and certainly in Maryland as an elected official, state chairman, and it has always been about the grassroots. It has always been about the bottom up. It has always been about reaching out and getting outside of what I like to call our comfort zone as Republicans. We do get a little comfortable with ourselves, and we do become so to the exclusion and detriment of others. And I think we have an enormous opportunity with the surge that we've seen in Tea Party activism and the engagement of voters by and large to really open up the doors of this party and let a new light shine in on it. Some fresh faces and voices that don't look and sound like us, that don't have the same walk or the same background and experience, but bring a wealth of new ideas to the table. We tried to do that through our coalition department at the RNC, created out of whole cloth with the idea of making it grassroots focused and oriented. I think as we go forward, certainly the conversations that I've had with the Tea Party leadership going back over a year will be a part of that and adding to that flavor every single day as the party expands into the 2012 cycle.
Yeah, we need to play well in the sandbox with Tea Party movement, with the conservative movement. I think we've done that. Certainly in Wisconsin, we did that. And I think we had a lot of success because of that, because like what I said before, we're not in competition with the movement. We're part of it. But our actions speak louder than words. We have to get out on the streets, talk to people, bring people in. We were one of the only states in the entire country that set up a Hispanic headquarters full-time, hired a Hispanic director full-time in Milwaukee to get the job done, to talk, to get out in the community, to build those coalitions. I have the full support of our RNHA leadership. We brought the RNHA on the executive committee of the Republican Party of Wisconsin. We brought on the African American Council to the Republican Party of Wisconsin. Our actions have to speak louder than words. We can make it happen, but we have to work together, and it has to be a priority, and it has to be, most importantly, a priority of the heart. And when it's a priority of the heart, good things will result.
Thank you for the question. And it is the job, absolutely the job of a good leader and any chairman of a state party or a national party to bring coalitions and people together towards a common purpose, both new and existing coalitions, all with the purpose of winning elections. And that is what we are all here to do. I love people. I love to communicate. I love to bring people to the table, to talk about ideas, to listen to what they have to say. This conservative movement that is out here over the last 2 years is fantastic. Let us not forget, the Tea Party, Patriot, and grassroots movement is why we had such victories in 2010. It absolutely is, ladies and gentlemen, and we can't forget it. All of these groups will have a seat at the table when I'm chairman of the Republican National Committee. It is important that we recognize the independence of the groups, the true grassroots authenticity, to listen to what they have to say, to make them a part of a winning coalition going forward.
Yeah, look, as somebody who kind of came up in 87, 88, I was kind of part of the Jack Kemp revolution that came in with conservatives who wanted to bring the party back. And this time around, the Tea Party people came back. We're really frustrated with both the Democratic and the Republican parties. And so when we lose our faith with the voters have a way of figuring out a different vehicle to come back and make their case. I think we do have to reach out to the Hispanic community, the African American community, the Asian community, whatever coalition, left-handed Lithuanians, whatever coalition is out there that is an opportunity for us to gain votes, we ought to work them. And I think that, I agree with Reince in this, is that we have to actually, show them by actions. We can't just kind of come in 60 days before an election and say, we care about the African American vote. Or we can't show up 30 days before the election and show up at some event and pretend like we care. In Michigan, we were very lucky this time around. We elected a Arab American, African American, a Hispanic American, all in predominantly white districts, who happened to be Republicans and ran as Republicans and ran as conservatives. And we didn't have to go out and look for token candidates. We were able to basically integrate people in the party and make a difference.
The next question begins with Chairman Steele. For years, the RNC has had a 72-hour get-out-the-vote operation, as you know, right before elections. That program has grown in some recent elections to up to a week before the election. In 2010, in this last cycle, that program, as you know, was discontinued. Do you think that was a wise choice? Why was it made? And if you're reelected chairman, would you revisit that decision?
It was a wise choice. It was not discontinued. It just wasn't put out the way that folks have been used to seeing it. We spend a lot of time, remember, I come from the perspective of a state chairman. I've heard enough state chairmen around the country say, I don't need strangers coming into my backyards, the last week of an election telling me how to run an election that they have no idea what it's about. So what we decided to do was to turn the RNC into a victory center, 100 phones available to anyone on Capitol Hill who wanted to come and make phone calls. But the money that would have been spent to pay for a per diem, airplane, and hotel for a week or 3 days or whatever it happens to be for Capitol Hill staffers to go to Michigan, to go to Wisconsin, to go to New Jersey or any place else in the country to work was a waste of resource. So what we did was we packaged the dollars and gave the money directly to the states for their 72-hour program. We believed very firmly in a bottom-up, state-focused, state-oriented program because they developed the programs. Every state party gave me a plan in early 2010, actually 2009, that laid out what their strategy was going to be. We funded that strategy directly. The 72-hour program was developed by each state. We funded those directly as opposed to spending the money, sending Capitol Hill staffers to different parts of the country. We just opened up the RNC and they could come across the street at no cost to anyone, have a sandwich, and make phone calls.
Well, I care to revisit the past, but I do think in the future we do need a fully funded GOTV effort across the board, wherever that may be. In the states, at the RNC, and it comes down to money. It comes down to resources. You've all heard the estimates, and I think everyone here will agree that the #1 challenge to the RNC moving forward is raising about $400 million over the next 2 years, which basically means that the next chairman is going to be sitting in that office for 5 or 6 hours a day, running through major donor lists, setting up meetings, setting up a national finance network, a national finance team, in order to fully fund all of these programs. We cannot go into 2012 having to make decisions between which GOT effort we fund and which one we don't. I think, and everyone would agree with that. But that is going to be the big challenge, whether it be technology, whether it be GOTV, whether it be a 50-state strategy, it will all come down to money. And that's why money is going to be the #1 priority for the next chairman of the RNC.
Good turnout programs, good state victory programs are nothing but words on a paper if there's no money and resources behind them. And we fell down as a national committee in this last election cycle in that regard. We have got to fully fund our state victory programs. It is important for the entire ticket, and it's going to be very, very important this next election cycle of 2012 when the Democrats are much more motivated and turnout is going to be at a very peak level. And 72-hour doesn't cut it anymore. We've got 32 states that have early voting, and we have to have what I'm calling a win early program, and we'll be happy to institute when I chair the Republican National Committee, so that 72 hours, certainly we need to push at the end in terms of turnout, but that turnout effort, those political efforts must start much, much earlier, but most of all, they have to be fully funded.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the most important things that we do as a Republican Party, especially at the national level, is coordinate and fund the Get Out the Vote effort on behalf of Republicans. The 72-hour program is no longer really a 72-hour program. It's a 30-day, sometimes even a 45-day program, depending on what states you come from. And the challenge we had this time around is we just didn't have enough resources. And I think as we go into 2012, when we're running a presidential race, we've got congressional, Senate, and gubernatorial races across this country. Reapportionment will be kicking in. We're going to have a lot of challenges with respect to funding. And I think the most important thing we can do, and I think everybody here has agreed, is that we're going to have to raise the money necessary to fund those programs. And to me, more than anything else that the party does, that is the most critical program that we have. It's the most important thing we can do. And every state party has constantly been struggling in order to get that done, from the largest to the smallest, from a swing state to those who are just getting out the vote on behalf of their local and state candidates.
Well, I'm a little partial to this particular 72-hour program because it was under my leadership that we actually implemented, funded, and put out 6,000 volunteers in 2004 for the 72-hour program and 1,000 attorneys. While I believe it's very, very important to assess our financial ability to do this, I would make sure that the 72-hour program, which really should be a 96-hour program, is implemented again and is part of our state party planning. I think it's important. When we sent 350 volunteers to the state of Ohio in 2004, that's what helped push Ohio over the top and won and reelected George W. Bush and kept our House, members of our House. I think that it's important to look and assess these grassroots organizations to provide the state parties with all the resources we can, including boots on the ground.
May I please address just a...
Yes, yes, you may.
Thank you. Because it's a little bit frustrating to hear people talk about fully funding the program. You're right, we did not have a lot of volunteers out of Washington, but we had 200,000 volunteers around the country who made 45 million voter contacts. We didn't have a 72-hour voter program. We had a 12-month voter program. Our victory operations began in January of 2010 and culminated with 64 House seats, 21 state legislatures flipping, 200,000 volunteers are on the ground, door knocking, sign waving, raising money for candidates. So the idea that we didn't fully fund it is really kind of a misnomer, because we did. We really did fully fund it. And you know how we did it? We did it differently. Your state may have gotten X amount of dollars in the last cycle, but because we were playing in all 50 states, you didn't get that level. We found other ways to get resources, whether it's boots on the ground, technology, et cetera, into your hands so that you can be competitive. Find me the state that didn't have a winning election, and maybe their program wasn't funding. I think we won in all 50 states this year, and that's the goal, winning.
The next question, beginning with Reince Priebus, is: do you consider combating voter fraud a high priority, and what plans do you have to combat it? Reince?
Well, that's a good question for me, because I was the chairman when we sued our Government Accountability Board in the state of Wisconsin over our non-compliance with an 8-year-old HAVA law. We are one of the few states in the entire country in Wisconsin where you can actually vote on election day without registering, and you can also vote without any picture identification at all. So our challenges in states like Wisconsin are astronomical. We have a Government Accountability Board that was appointed by a Democratic governor, all former judges appointed by that same governor. We have no statewide registration list that's remotely accurate still as of this day. So as a National Party chairman, I would use the resources to assist, obviously, the state parties in their actions against their states. I think we need to win these battles in the courts. I think we need to win more races in the legislature so that we can pass photo ID in all states and make sure that we either have photo ID, real ID, or some method of protecting our constitutional right to vote in this country. And I think it has to be a top priority of the next chairman.
Voter fraud is a real issue out there, and it's important that every state party and at the national party that we provide the resources and the legal basis and the resources in order to stop voter fraud out there and to initiate what we'll call ballot integrity programs across the country. Poll watchers are very, very important to have out there to keep vigilant, and we had an army of those in this last election cycle at many precincts around the state of Missouri. Provisional balloting is a key way that we've got to play and make sure that those rules and the integrity of that are kept. We have to have teams of lawyers out there that we can call at a moment's notice to go down, whether it's closing a poll, whether it's checking on the ballots and the voting that's going on at any particular polling place. All of that goes into it. Technology, has given us this great ability to make voting, free and fair and easier. We want people to vote. We want it to be easy for them to vote, but harder for them to cheat. So it's important that we get out there and fund these ballot integrity programs at the state and national level.
Yeah, look, I think voter fraud is a very serious issue for all of us, obviously. If you take a look at what's happened, Michigan, as an example, is a blue state that can go red under the right circumstances. And one of our challenges has traditionally been voter fraud in many of the urban areas. In the last cycle, we found tens of thousands of absentee ballots that were actually signed and never filled out, and apparently were for sale. And luckily that we were able to get a hold of those ballots. We called in the Attorney General's office, we called in the state police, and ultimately the FBI took control of them. And part of it was because we set up a program that worked. We had over 400 volunteer attorneys that participated in the program. We had pre-filed lawsuits that basically all you had to do was fill in the blank and make them work. And so I think there's a lot of things that we can do at the national level to make sure that those states who are involved in some of these races now and some of these challenges now could basically be shared with everybody else. It's kind of a best practices aspect that I think we could really make a big difference, especially in some of the states that don't have the resources and currently haven't been doing the kinds of things that some of the swing states have been involved in.
I, too, have been involved with a lot of ballot integrity and ballot security programs, and I think they're extremely important. And I'll just remind you, in 1981, some of you probably weren't even born, in the state of New Jersey, we won our governor, Tom Kean, by 1,776 votes. In the state of Florida in 2000, we won by 500 votes. Ballot integrity programs are important, and as chairman, that would be one of the things I would most certainly fund, starting off by training, early training of people within the states, and then going out and training within districts and local organizations. Additionally, making sure that we had the attorneys like we did in 2004. We sent out 1,000 attorneys from the area to the various states around the country. And finally, providing the resources necessary to go to court when you have to go to court to fight these cases.
The issue of ballot integrity is clearly one that's on the foremind of everyone in terms of whether or not ballots are secure and whether or not people can trust that the process is going to work. Certainly over the past year, even going back to the 2009 election cycle, we made a very concerted effort to coordinate much more closely with state parties than we have in the past, whether it was in Wisconsin, where we worked very closely with Reince and his team, or in New Jersey with Governor Christie's effort, knowing that there are security issues that one should be concerned of. And coming from a state like Maryland, we know what it's like to lose a governor's race because of cheating. So the reality for us at the national level has got to be one of direct coordination, not dictation to our state parties. They know what the feel and the environment is on the ground. So having them come to us and say, this is what we need, and then being able to provide that is critical when it comes to ballot security issues, because they know first and foremost what the realities are. And the second and final piece, of course, is coordinating nationally with lawyers like the Republican National Lawyers Association and other groups out there and individuals who can be a part of that team, particularly when you get into the cycle at the end, as we just recently did with recounts, to make sure that their legal representations are there.
So here's the next question. A number of you have made the point that the incoming Republican Congress was elected on hopes that it would address spending above all other matters. How confident are you that the new leadership will in fact do that, and what specific government programs do you think will be dramatically pared down or cut by the incoming Republican Congress? Ann Wagner, we begin with you.
Well, I think we saw a very good beginning with our Republican leadership that came in during the lame duck session and took a real hard stand against earmarks. We saw the omnibus bill fall under the weight of its own weight, and it's important very much that spending and debt be drawn in. And as I said a little bit earlier, I think everything needs to be on the table. We need to look at department cuts, the growth and the glut in government. If you look at the failed stimulus package of past, really all it did was grow government. It didn't grow jobs, as we still maintain close to 10% unemployment. So it's important that we look at departments to cut. It's important that we look at programs to cut. It's important that we even look at some of the mandates that are out there that need to be on, and the entitlements that need to be looked at, and for fraud and waste and abuse. I think that this Congress is going to take it very, very seriously. And if they don't, the people will have a say in 2012.
Yeah, look, I think that we have a lot of challenges, and I'm very optimistic with respect to the Republicans we've elected in Congress. I think these people came here with a mandate, and they understand exactly why they're here. I think those who actually listen to the people of America and act on what they were elected to do are going to be effective and get reelected. Whether it's programs like TARP or stimulus, whether it's across-the-board cuts that will probably be necessary to even get us close to balancing the budget, we have to create a system that allows the system to work, that our system to work. We can't have crony capitalism in this country and succeed. Otherwise, we will turn into a European-style country. And today what happens is we've got capitalism on the way up and socialism on the way down. And that doesn't work, and we can't afford it as a country. We can't afford it as a taxpayer. And at some stage of the game, we have to start worrying about the taxpayers, which I think is one of our biggest advantages. So from my perspective, there's across-the-board cuts that have to be done. I hope we never get into a situation again where even considering TARP or stimulus type of packages. And I think our Republicans have learned that lesson, and hopefully we'll vote that way.
You know, I think, again, if we've learned anything from the 2010 elections from our friends in the Tea Parties, is that we have to be focused. We have to stick to our principles of cutting taxes and cutting spending. And I think that we've gotten off to a great start with our new Republican leadership with regards to doing away with earmarks. I also think that Speaker Boehner today gestured 5%. He was going to cut his personal budget, congressional budget, by 5% and the rest of Congress's budget by 5%. But that's not enough. I think that they've gone further with regards to looking at bills that don't have amendments that put on bridges to nowhere. And I think that, again, there has to be across-the-board cuts in order for us to reduce our deficit and cut spending. You know, as the former Deputy Secretary of Transportation, I can tell you that $65 billion, they always want more. But during the Bush administration, we held the line and we made sure that we didn't go up in our spending. And I think that's what our Republican leadership is going to do. And I think it's important that we hold their feet to the fire to make sure that they do exactly what they were elected to do.
I think we need to be clear here about the role that we have in this position as chairman. As I was reminded several times by the members of the Senate and the House, you don't do policy. And the reality of it is we don't in this perch. We do politics. What our responsibility is, and what mine has been over the last 2 years, is to take to the leadership what I hear from you, what I hear from our grassroots, what I hear from our state chairman, what the concerns of the party are. Because I don't get, and you won't if you have this job, get to sit there and decide what the policy is. But you can have an impact on the politics of the policy by being an advocate on behalf of grassroots activists, whether they're Tea Partiers or a grandma who's looking to get involved for the first time. Be an advocate for our senior citizens. Be an advocate for up-and-comers out there who are just starting on their own. To have a conversation about translating the tax and other policies that are coming off the Hill so people understand in the grassroots what's going on and the people on the Hill understand what the grassroots want. Because at the end of the day, you don't get to dictate the terms to the Speaker of the House. You don't get to dictate the terms to the minority leader in the Senate. You have to carry that message to them, and you have to bring that message from them. And if you get it wrong, you'll be reminded you don't do policy.
Well, one of the things that I talk about a lot as chairman of the Wisconsin Party is that while we lick the envelopes and we put up the signs and we do the hard work and we raise the money, guess what? We expect a certain result. And I think the party does have a role in enforcing what that expectation is with our elected officials. And if the results aren't there, we do have power to dictate results, or at least help dictate results, and that's called go to the ballot box. It's called primary. You know, the voters gave us a lease. They didn't give us the keys. We have an opportunity to put this train back on the rails. How many people who are Republican here actually believe that the idea of America is at stake in 2012? Who believes that? Well, we started off the right way in eliminating earmarks. Our people get it. But we need to go further. One of my good friends, Paul Ryan, who I was his congressional chairman for years, he gets it. And he knows that we need to elevate the debate because we need to save our country.
The next question is a video question, hence the screen, from the College Republican National Committee Communications Director, Rob Lockwood, submitted by video.
In 2008, nearly 20% of the total voting population was between the ages of 18 and 29 years old. Unfortunately for Republicans, that demographic voted in a fashion of 66% for President Obama and the Democrats. However, this past October, in a nationwide poll conducted by the AP, that same demographic said that they only have a 44% approval of President Obama and the outgoing Democratic Congress. What this gives the Republican Party is a golden opportunity to recruit and engage new members into the party. As a newly elected chairman or chairwoman, what would you do to help the college Republicans and the young Republicans out from the national level with messaging so that we can do our jobs to engage these people into the process?
Saul Anuzis starts.
Well, first of all, I think, with respects to messaging, I think our messages ought to be very clear and ought to be very straightforward. I think conservative values work. I think they work on college campuses, and we can be very successful. I think we have to understand the technology that these kids are using these days. I mean, today it's not enough to just say, well, I use Twitter, or I use Facebook, or I know what social media is. You have to actually be part of it and live it. And I think when you do, when you take a look at the thousands, hundreds of thousands, in fact, millions, hundreds of millions of people that are on Facebook, as an example. And today, over 70% of most people get some of their information online. And much of what the college Republicans and all the young voters are going to want to hear and what they're going to be part of and where they're going to get that information are from online sources. So I think we have to be very active with the college Republicans and the young Republicans. We obviously have legal restrictions as to what we can and can't do. But I think that this is a program and this is an area where this is not only the future of the party, this is the party today. And this is where we're going to grow and this is where we'll succeed.
You know, in 2010, we were very, very fortunate to elect the next generation of young Republican leaders. If you look at Marco Rubio, Kristi Noem, Jamie Herrera, just to name a couple, it's an extraordinary group of individuals. And I would look at using those young, new leaders to help us and appeal to our young voters. It will be so extremely important. I would also make sure that our state victory plans have a significant component dealing with our young voters, looking at going back to college campuses and registering voters and making sure that we get young voters as volunteers. Additionally, I would use our young leaders to help us recruit candidates. We need to have a bench, and that bench is nothing better served than by young Republicans. And finally, I'll touch on a little bit what Saul has. We need to be able to communicate with our young voters. We need to be able to do social networking, but we also need to look beyond what the next generation of that communication is with our young folks.
We made a significant investment at the RNC in my first year just on that front to make what we had to say relevant through new vehicles and new technologies. Revamping, we don't have a web page, we have a web platform that can be used in different ways by those who, as Saul noted, and this would include Saul, really make use of Twitter and blogging and the like. That is the first step of many that we have to take in order to engage this new generation of voters who are coming into their own. They're getting elected. I've encouraged over the past 2 years our YRs and our college Republicans, and I would encourage them now to run for national committeeman and committeewoman for your state party, to run for chairman of your state party, to run for local office, to run and be involved in this process. Get your fingers here at the table and help shape the direction of the party, because the future is not tomorrow, as Saul noted. It is right now. It is right now. And so every effort we've made at the RNC has been towards engaging, from our bus tour, our national bus tour, Fire Pelosi tour, to what we've done in the election cycles and even in the off year, engaging young voters to have a seat at this table and to help shape the direction and the future of this party. Because all of us at some point are going to need to retire, probably sooner than later for some. And the reality of it is that we need to make certain that the next generation is prepared and ready to step up.
Yeah, I think it's a couple things, and I think that's right. I think you have to engage young people. You have to bring them in the fold. And I do agree with Maria as well, though, that we have to promote the new generation of the Republican Party. Someone mentioned Marco Rubio, one of my law school classmates, and Paul Ryan, Aaron Schock. I mean, we have GOP rising stars coming out of our ears right now. But at the end of the day, keep in mind, one of the biggest youth movements in our country was Ronald Reagan. So at the end of the day, it's all about engaging young people and bringing them in, college students, teenage Republicans. That's how I got involved as a teenager. And then as a college Republican president, and then working my way up the ranks. But the way I got involved was, one senior guy invited me to come and lick envelopes and get involved in the party. And you know what? That's where it all started. It wasn't a young person that got me involved. It was just, it was a grown-up. And I got involved, and here I am debating my potential candidacy here for RNC chairman.
The youth of this nation and of this party are not the future of our party. They are the heart of our party. And I was never so reminded of that when I had the privilege of chairing Roy Blunt's U.S. Senate campaign in this last election cycle. The youth of our party run our parties. They run our elections. They're the workers out there that are going door to door, making the calls, the staffers that are working countless hours for nothing but a pizza. I'm 48 years old. I was old in this last election cycle. And I have a great idea to use new technology and reach and have a conversation with the young people, the youth of America, where they live. It's important that I think we begin to institute, and I want to develop this some, the virtual precinct. You all have, as I'm staring at two right here, have a Facebook page. You have a network. You have a group of people that are a sphere of influence to you, that follow you, that are a part of your world. You ought to be advocating to them, just like we do the old demographic and geographic precinct out there. You ought to be targeting them. You ought to be messaging to them. You ought to be turning them out. The virtual precinct is a way to take the CRs and the YRs, I hope, and make them a real part of this next election cycle.
All right, it is time for our lightning round, and before we go to that, I just want to remind our viewers that we are still open to comments and questions from Twitter. The address, once again, is RNC Debate. That's the hashtag, of course, preceded as initiates know by the pound sign. So please send them our way.
The late and unlamented governor of Florida, Governor Charlie Christie, raised a great deal of money as a...
Christ.
The other.
The other, yeah.
Sort of a combination.
Florida, the one down south, raised a great deal of money running as a Republican from Republicans, received money from Republican committees and institutions, then decided to run as an independent. A number of people who ran for office as Republicans, raising money from Republicans, then would endorse other candidates if they didn't win the primary. Perhaps as a result, the Standing Committee on Rules for the RNC passed a resolution, the Party Unity Pledge, saying that anybody who receives money from Republicans running as Republicans could sign that pledge and be responsible for returning that money if they decide to run on another party's line or endorse a different candidate. The short answer to the long question is, do you support the adoption of this Party Unity Pledge into the rules of the Republican Party? Maria Cino.
Yes.
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 See?
Man,
Actually, I got one word in there, right? 2 words?
boy, that was indeed a lightning round. All right. Beginning with Chairman
for double
Steele.
jeopardy.
I'm impressed. Do you think...
Yeah, you're next. Okay.
Yes, beginning with you, if you would. Do you believe that Republican primaries ought to be limited to Republicans, or should they be opened up to anyone who wants to cast a vote in them?
Limited to Republicans.
Republicans.
Republican primaries should be for Republicans.
Yeah, I believe in closed primaries.
I do too.
Aside from President Reagan, who is your political hero? Ryan. Last year we got caught
Well, this is a trick question.
Yeah.
Hang on.
Apart from Reagan, in addition to Reagan, after Reagan, who would you cite as a political hero? Ryan.
Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to my state. You know, we had a fantastic Missouri governor, and he served as Attorney General here. It's General John Ashcroft is my political hero. He brought me into the party way back in the early 90s when I started as a staffer as redistricting. I think he's a man of character and integrity. So, oh, this is a lightning rod. I'm sorry. John Ashcroft.
Yep.
Ludwig von Mises, Freedom Works.
Margaret Thatcher.
Frederick Douglass.
Outstanding. Where do you get your news? Beginning with
My news?
yeah.
The Daily Caller.
Well, it's sort of like the Reagan
Sometimes
question.
I have to avoid looking at it on some days, but no. Usually, mostly from the internet. The final 3 pages in the first sections of the Wall Street Journal, Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, WIS Politics, WIS GOP.
News is all around us. I get it mainly off the internet, and I read everything from blogs to newspapers, you name it, everything on the internet.
Yeah, my favorite source is That Saul, folks. It's a great blog. It's got a lot of good stuff in there. But I'm probably a religious reader of, the Drudge Report, Hotline, Politico, and all the, other political information that's online. I probably spend quite a bit of time every day perusing and sharing.
Especially lately.
So much for lightning rod. I get my news online also, Wall Street Journal, National Review, and anything political.
I'm an old-fashioned guy. I start the day every morning with a hard copy of the Washington Post, and then I go online to get the real news. No, I just kidding.
Okay, this will be a quick one. Do you support completely defunding Planned Parenthood? Ann Wagner.
Absolutely, and we did so to a large extent in Missouri.
Yes.
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 Wow. Beginning with you, Mr. Anuzis, name something Obama has done that you agree with.
I went on vacation. Country is much safer.
His battle to fight obesity.
I think his effort to prosecute, with the Republicans' help, the war.
Yeah, I would agree with that. If he upholds his end of the bargain, yep.
I think he's done a good job reaching out to use the new technology, and we need to do the same in this next election.
Okay, starting with Maria Cino. How many guns do you own?
None.
None.
5.
Well, I may surprise y'all, but we just got a new gun safe for Christmas, and I think there are about 16 in there. Everything from pistols and a Glock to shotguns, rifles, and my son, who's on the combat weapons team at West Point, has an all-assault rifle, I'm sad to report, too. So there you go.
Yeah, I'm very inadequate at 4. Sorry.
Mr. Steele, can Sarah Palin win a general election?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Whose turn is it?
Mike?
It is your
Yeah,
turn.
that was
Yes,
quick.
absolutely. Sorry.
Yes.
Yes.
And we go to Reince. Favorite book?
Reagan Diaries.
Favorite bar? Probably my kitchen table. I don't know.
Favorite
No,
book, favorite book.
Oh, favorite book. Oh, I thought they said favorite bar.
That was deeply revealing, by the way.
I guess if I were an
I'm just
ambassador, I'd be like,
Favorite bar? Well, I didn't hear, Reince. What was your favorite book?
Reagan Diaries.
Reagan Diaries. Ah, all right. Well, I like George W. Bush's new book. How about that?
I'd say The Law.
To Kill a Mockingbird.
War and Peace.
It's a bar, too.
It's a bar, too. It's the best of times and the worst of times.
I love it. I love
Is that War and Peace? Wasn't it? War and Peace.
Thank you all. That was the lightningest lightning round I've ever seen, and very much appreciated. Thank you very much. We're going to go now to follow-ups that we have received, and we literally just received them so quickly we haven't had time to doctor them. So these are right over the. These are literally things that we just got. And this is the one on top, Maria Cino. This is from Drew Walker. Did you lobby for Obamacare? If so, why?
You know, I think that no one wants to go to a government-run healthcare system. I think that we've seen what has happened overseas, particularly in Europe. And I'm proud to say this last year, I worked with our Republican members in the House and in the Senate. I worked against death panels and rationing. I worked to reform malpractice suits. I worked to make sure that innovation was rewarded, and I worked to increase intellectual property protection.
Thank you.
No, I did not. I worked for the Republican principles that I just mentioned.
Okay. Ann Wagner, how would you solve the RNC's current budget crisis prior to the beginning of the Victory 2011 program? From Laura Chapman.
Well, it's about fundraising. It's about fully funding the Republican National Committee. We have to get out and restore our major donor programs. I put forward a plan on annwagner.com. I hope you can go take a look at it. That talks about top-tier donors at the $25,000 level, 10, 5, and on down to our lower donors. We have got to get together all over this country. I must go to them with a business prospectus to lay out a plan for victory, and then we have to deliver those victories. We have to raise close to $400,000, retire a debt, put presidential trust money, cover the runnings of RNC, and most importantly, we have to fund our state party programs. Are these 30 seconders? Oh,
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Chairman Steele, at times you have defended your record from criticism by suggesting your critics were acting because of the fact that you are African American, in other words, out of bias. Do you believe that to be true?
No, I don't. I've not defended my record that way at all. It's been interpreted by some in the media that way, but that is not, you've never heard those words leave my lips, nor have I defended my record that way. My record stands for itself. We won. I was asked to win elections. I was asked to raise money, $192 million over the last 2 years. We won. And the fact that we're here right now celebrating that win, I think says a lot about the record.
My tweeted question is for the gentleman who is glad that this is not a write-in campaign, Reince Priebus.
Yes.
Third-party groups sprang up and helped win elections in 2010. Why do we need an RNC at all? What can the RNC do that others can't? From Josh Cullen.
Well, I think that we can drive the ground game pretty darn well, and we can raise money, and we have a vast national network of people who are committed to putting the party and its principles on their shoulders to make sure that that happens. Now, that does not mean that we should not play well in the sandbox with everyone, because we all need to have good relationships, good coalitions, ATR, SBA, Wisconsin Right to Life, and we need to operate as a team. But at the end of the day, the Republican Party is one of the two major political parties, obviously, in this country, and we need to be strong, we need to be well-funded, and we need to be on the ground with everybody moving forward to win in 2012. We have to continue our fight.
Thank you. Saul Anuzis, you're from Michigan. How will you target predominantly blue states like Michigan, Maryland, the Northeast, and the West Coast?
Well, look, I think that what we have to do is reach out to the traditional voter that we have lost. You know, my family, I grew up in the city of Detroit. I mean, we were Reagan Democrats. We always thought we were Democrats until I actually started reading. And so I think that we have a tremendous opportunity. If you go and take a look at where the American voter is today, it is us. It is the, my father used to refer to it as God, guns, and guts Republicans, people who believe in the traditional values that make up probably 70% plus of our society. And as long as we appeal to them on conservative values, I think we can win. I think it is always very interesting, and I think a mistake when we think we have to change. My clock was up, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. I think we're ready for our closing statement, so we're going to go from Ms. Priebus back down this way, 1 minute each.
You bet. Thank you, Tucker and Grover and Marjorie. This election's about choices. Life's about choices. And God gives us all different talents and different gifts. Everyone up here is a good person. And I'm not running against anybody. I'm running for RNC chairman at a different time, different circumstances, and different needs. I'm running at a time when we need a chairman who's going to be an absolute workhorse, someone that's going to put their head down, someone that's going to bring unity to our Republican National Committee, put on a great convention, tackle redistricting, and I've demonstrated that I can do all of that as chairman in Wisconsin. As I said many times, we learned how to work with the conservative movement. And I'm asking everybody in this room for your support. And I know not all of you can vote for me, but if God blesses me to be the chairman of this party, all of us are going to have to work as a team to get it done, to save our country, in turn save our party, and win in 2012 and take back the White House. Thank you, and God bless you.
I'd like to thank our sponsors for this opportunity today. I want to thank the members, and this closing is to the members of the Republican National Committee, the 168 members. Thank you for allowing me to serve as your chairman for the past 2 years. Thank you for entrusting me to take risks for you. Thank you for entrusting me to break some new grounds for you. Thank you for the opportunity to empower our state parties unlike they've ever been empowered before. If you want more of that, if you want to do more of that, if you want to be strong, independent, and engaged state parties, you don't need a top-down RNC, because I'm not a top-down person, as you know. You need more of the same from the bottom up, expansion and opportunity. And as national chairman, that is my commitment, not my promise, because the record that we have laid out for you speaks for itself. We can do more, and we will do it better. Thank you.
Thanks again to our host and to the RNC members that are here today. I believe that I am uniquely qualified to be the chairman of the RNC because I have successfully done this job before. I have turned around a national campaign committee that was in debt and went on to win a majority in the U.S. House of Representatives. Twice, I was personally responsible for planning, funding, and implementing 50 state victory programs around the country in 2000 and 2004. My past experience has given me the foundation and skills necessary to build the party in a presidential election. On January 15th, I walk into the RNC with no on-the-job training necessary because I've already done this job. I ask you, for the RNC members, for your vote and for your trust to take over the Republican National Committee. Thank you very much.
Well, look, I'm a movement conservative who believes ideas have consequences and principles matter. But I also believe that I'm uniquely qualified to take this position on. I think that I have the administrative skills, having run an operation with over 400 employees and a $60 million budget. I have the political skills, having worked on over hundreds of campaigns from the presidential level down to the county level. I have the fundraising skills that are necessary to raise millions of dollars in some of the toughest times. And believe me, retiring a debt is going to be some of the toughest times. And I'm also probably one of the more technologically advanced members who understands what it means to communicate with the millions of people today who get most of their information over the internet. And probably most importantly, that I am a member. I'm a member that believes that we ought to be a member-based organization, that we should involve the members from across the country who want to be involved in this process. Every single person on the National Committee got there the hard way. They worked their way up because they offered something to their states. They had talents that they want to share with us, and we need to put together a member-based committee that will make a difference and help us win in 2012. Thank you very much.
I'm the daughter of small business owners, has been working since I was probably 11 years old. I've been living my traditional conservative Republican values my entire life of limited government and free enterprise and personal responsibility. I began my political career as a grassroots activist. I became a leader who knew how to connect with people, articulate a message, how to win elections and put winning teams and coalitions together in order to do that. My experience is rooted in the heartland of America. I am a suburban mother of 3 who's been married for 24 years and whose American dream is all about serving her community and her country in the way of advancing Republican principles and ideals and candidates. I think we have an opportunity here to change course on January 14th at the Republican National Committee. I am asking for the support, for the vote, and for the help of everyone on the Republican National Committee and all of you out there so that we can win in 2012 and so that I can be elected the next chairman of the Republican National Committee. Our freedoms, our families, and our republic is worth the fight. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, candidates Ann Wagner, Saul Anuzis, Maria Cino, Michael Steele, Reince Priebus, thank you for joining us, RNC members. The election is January 14th, thanks to Tucker and to Marjorie. See everybody in 2 years.
very important. Well, good to meet you. I'm Matt Lewis. I'm with the politics laser. I'm by AOL. Yeah. Good to meet you. My friend.
Nice to see you.
Okay. Yeah, let's get together. Okay. Well, either do it before or after little Burke comes along. January 23rd. It's coming up. Yeah.
Early next year.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you. You too.
Take it easy. You know the whole Malcolm Gladwell thing and Outliers? Good to see you. And Outliers says that if you're born in January, you'll have a better chance of being successful than if you're born like in December.